Good morning. Well, we're starting in a couple of minutes. We're just going to give people a few minutes to join. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Victoria Allen, Senior Marketing Manager here at Ascertia, and I will be moderating the webinar. Before we start, I just had a couple of housekeeping bits, as you can see on the screen. Just to let you know, all participants are on mute. The webinar is being recorded and will be made available after the session. And if you have any questions, please click on the Q&A button in the Zoom client, enter your question into the Q&A panel, and we will try to reply to as many as possible at the end of the session. Finally, if you have any questions for Ascertia or wish to speak to one of our team, please email marketing@ascertia.com. For today's session, I'm delighted to introduce our CTO, Mike Hathaway. I will now hand over to Mike to begin the webinar.
Thanks, Victoria, and hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. I'm Mike Hathaway, Chief Technology Officer. Let's get started. So we begin by talking about the digitization of business process. And I guess businesses over the course of the last 5-10 years have been busy digitizing business processes and really transforming how they use and consume resources. So here's a few examples of digitization and/or transformation. So self-evidently, there's been a huge drive in the adoption of cloud services, whether this is public or private, infrastructure as a service, software as a service, application as a service. Businesses have increased their adoption and use of these cloud providers. With a workforce that's heavily distributed, either working from home, the train or airport departure lounge, or on the road, the use of laptop, mobile, tablet, and in some cases, the user's own devices has skyrocketed. And there's also been a huge increase in connected devices. Pretty much most, if not all of us, have a smartphone, smartwatch, or some other smart device we carry about our person, as well as a large percentage of us having at least one or more smart devices in their home. There's also been an increase in connected device programs, which include things like smart meter in the short term, and as we look to the longer term, smart car, smart city, etc. And with the adoption of all these cloud-based services, there's been a huge increase in the amount of data that we see residing with these cloud providers. And as more services become available to citizens and businesses, the amount of data that resides in the cloud is evidently going to grow. So with the transition to this new world, this is defined really well by Gartner. And here's their, I guess, dictionary definition, which is the creation of new business designs by blurring the physical and digital world, which equates to the online interactions between people, devices, and things. So here are a few examples that I'm sure most people will be aware of. So online gaming, shopping, banking, general online commerce that we'll all be familiar with and use in our daily lives. The transition of paper-based processes to electronic processes by way of online digital signatures from qualified, advanced, and basic signature trust service providers. Infrastructure services that most enterprises are now being able to leverage, such as online computational services, cloud compute, cloud storage, etc. Security as a service, lots of small, medium, and sometimes even large organizations don't have the expertise in-house and therefore would naturally leverage managed PKI and or a managed HSM service or hardware security module service. And one I think most people are probably familiar with is software as a service, leveraging some form of online CRM system, office, or productivity tools. So digitizing business processes brings a completely new set of identity challenges. So things like, how do network devices, servers, desktops enter a password to authenticate to each other? With a mobile workforce whose office is often a coffee shop, or when we are permitted to travel, an airport departure lounge or a railway station, how do we provide secure and frictionless access? How do we then also go to provide secure building access control, laptop access, and secure printing facilities? And in the same token, with all this data distributed across many cloud providers, where's all the data really? Who's had access to it? How can we secure and ensure accountability? If we look at the world today as businesses continue their journeys to digitizing business processes, we see an increase obviously in the enterprise using SaaS providers. There are more interactions between the business and the providers in either hosting applications, data, or both. And increasingly now, users are in charge of sourcing, securing, installing the apps to enable these interactions. And that enables the flow of data from the business to the enterprise. So the real traditional perimeters that we used to know and love, such as the security guard on the front desk, the firewall, the VPN, that perimeter is now evaporating, and in some cases is completely eroded. IT as well is not always in charge of these selection processes, and so business units often select the appropriate cloud provider that meets their business need, and this results in the IT department having to flex and change rules on the firewall perhaps, or application stack at very short notice. Users are mobile. We're all on our mobile phones, our tablets, our laptops, operating across a variety of selection of devices, and that ultimately brings to the forefront that user experience above most things tends to be the most important thing, which is where we see the ultimate IT challenge of the organization having to safeguard the data that's flowing from it to these cloud providers, as well as supporting the user experience, but ultimately the business agility needed to adopt and support these providers. So what's the prime implication of the evaporating perimeter? Well, we now need to be able to trust in identity more than ever before. The value or sensitivity of the information in the business hasn't declined. Quite the opposite. Barriers and air gaps that might have protected it previously have somewhat dropped or fallen away, and trusted identity is more essential than ever. The challenge business face is how to apply the appropriate level of vetting to the enrollment process to establish the identity of a user, a device, or an application without introducing friction or barriers to adoption. In today's world, with these barriers falling away, trust in every entity on your network becomes crucial. Typical identities consist of things like network devices, workstations, printers, servers, access points, etc., all of which we know have a unique machine address and IP address to attach them to the network. However, machine addresses and IPs are easily spoofed, which can lead to rogue devices attaching to networks. Users are not only employees, but also partners, contractors, possibly customers who need to be strongly identified, but also differentiated in terms of privilege, and perhaps their identity is managed over time. We have applications, their access is largely autonomous and automatic, and it's these applications and their transactions that fuel the speed of digital business. Cyber threats are at an all-time high, and all cyber threats fundamentally originate from an attack on identity, whether that be an individual or an application. So with this in mind, you need consistency across the organization for policy and assurance around identity and a concrete understanding of trust in identity. PKI is the ideal vehicle for enabling strong identity across an enterprise. And PKI is the most versatile choice. Keys and certificates issued from a centrally managed PKI deployed to best practice is the only technology capable of offering businesses cryptographically secure credentials that enable integrity, authenticity, and information protection in a secure and frictionless manner. PKI, when deployed correctly, provides consistency, policy assurance around identity and identity management in an organization across a variety of use cases. It is an essential technology for all crypto and key management teams. So if we return to the definition of digital business, we can see that PKI and trust services are crucial to and underpin digital business. The use of digital identities makes transacting in an online world secure and enables digital trust. Digital trust provides you the assurance needed to know that you are transacting with a genuine person, organization, or government body. In order to conduct digital business, you need digital trust. And without digital identities and PKI, you cannot conduct digital business. In order to conduct digital business, this makes your trust infrastructure part of your critical infrastructure. Trust infrastructure equaling digital identity equaling digital trust, which enables digital business. PKI is crucial to digital business. So in order to put trust in any digital identity, you must first perform vetting and enrollment. A digital identity is only as strong as the vetting process that has been used at time of enrollment. Know Your Customer, or KYC from the financial services world, provides a good process for vetting and enrollment of individuals for mortgages, bank accounts, and credit cards. It establishes that the individual is who they claim to be in order to prevent or reduce fraud and provides good risk management. KYC checks can be used to different levels to help when working at different assurance levels. As an example, a check to ensure you have an email address is a fairly weak way to check your identity, since emails can easily be intercepted or spoofed. This would be used for low assurance vetting for the automated issuance of a digital identity. You could then step up to requesting more information from your users during enrollment for you to verify prior to issuing them a medium assurance identity. The point is, there's not one size that fits all, and so the process and applications need to be flexible to meet your needs. In digitizing this process, or performing electronic Know Your Customer checks, you are able to prove greater levels of efficiency in the process while providing flexibility and convenience. E-enabling the process helps reduce cost, can be easily adapted to help you respond faster to your business needs, and can easily be integrated into other systems to aid the vetting process. Ultimately, this will lead to the greater user satisfaction enable you to do business at a faster pace. Thomson Reuters estimates it costs approximately $60 million per year for performing KYC checks for the financial services industry. They also equate that it takes approximately 32 days on average to onboard a new client, and about 89% of surveyed respondents indicated a bad KYC experience. Ultimately, customers looking to sign up for a service argue that most KYC procedures create friction, result in a poor user experience. This often results in them abandoning the process altogether and looking for an easier alternative, and or in some cases driving a user to a competitor. KYC doesn't stop at end users. Businesses also need an efficient and secure way to onboard devices and applications, etc., for digital identities. And these tend to fall into at least two categories. First of all, you have industrial devices. These are often built in a secure manufacturing setting. Devices are registered with the manufacturing PKI and shipped securely via a secure supply chain with an embedded credential that's then used to bootstrap an enrollment process once they arrive at their destination. Then you have the category of enterprise devices or enterprise applications, and these are intelligent intelligent applications that can be configured by an administrator to participate in an enrollment and KYC process. But organizations require robust and flexible products to help onboard people, devices, things, applications, etc. eKYC or electronic Know Your Customer check is an advanced or provides advanced registration tools to enable businesses to support a variety of enrollment models that may be needed to support different levels of assurance for your digital identity needs. As an example, at one end of the spectrum, as I mentioned earlier, a simple enrolment process, a digital identity that grants access to a secure corporate wireless network. That may only require a check against Active Directory to verify your domain membership before a digital identity is automatically issued. And here, you see the pictorial view of what that might look like. At the other end of the spectrum, the issuance of a digital ID that provides high-value, publicly trusted digital signatures on documents that need to be legally binding and adhered to in a court of law. This would arguably require a more robust and secure registration process and require the user to supply copies of identity documents as part of their enrollment request. It may require to have 1 or even 2 levels of vetting prior to the credential being issued, and it may also require a face-to-face and or a video call to verify liveliness and that the user is who they claim to be. So here you see the introduction of the first and level vetting. Administrators would verify identity documents against what the user supplied during enrollment. They may confirm those against external data sources like HR records, credit referencing agencies, utilities, etc., etc. Organizations need a platform that enable them to easily adapt to the rapidly changing needs of the digital world. Many permutations of enrollment and vetting exist, and they vary for each use case. Enrollment and vetting of devices is even more interesting as this requires automation, but organizational policy that's being implemented still requires high assurance. KYC is a fundamental part of establishing trust in an identity prior to the issuance of a digital certificate from a trust infrastructure. Trust services such as PKI rely on registration and vetting technology in order to collect information about a person, a device, or an application that's attempting to enroll for a digital identity. Registration and vetting applications enable businesses to create workflow to collect information from people, devices, and things that are requesting certificates, enable them to make decisions based on the information that's been supplied. This, together with information stored in third-party systems to help validate the information that's been supplied during the enrollment. Organizations need a platform to enable them to easily adapt to the rapid and changing needs of the digital world. So how can Ascertia and Ascertia products help with digitization, and identity vetting? Well, we're introducing a new product, ADSS WebRA Server. This is an integral part of the Ascertia product family and integrates easily with ADSS CA Server on the right-hand side of the slide and a business application, or in our case, the Ascertia Signing Hub application to enable the digital signing of documents and secure use of credentials. WebRA Server is built or designed and purpose-built to enable and simplify enrollment and workflow to enable electronic Know Your Customer checks. WebRA can address simple enrollment and vetting use cases and automatically enable the issuance of digital certificates in a simple workflow. Conversely, it can be used to implement queued workflow, help capture information about the user, and then provide first and or second levels of approval before a digital identity can be issued. ADSS WebRA Server helps reduce cost. It helps to increase user satisfaction and can easily be integrated into an existing deployment and can be fully branded to meet the needs of most businesses who are looking to introduce enrollment and vetting for their digital identity needs. Here's a more detailed view of some of the processes and steps that can be employed to deliver comprehensive workflows. So as we saw from my earlier diagrams, you can implement simple workflow that would just rely upon the user receiving an enrollment or account activation email before they're issued with a digital credential. That's wholly possible and acceptable for low assurance use cases. But you could step that up, require more information from your user, and have first and or second level vetting. These are completely optional, and depending on the type of credential that you're issuing, the type of information that your end user is accessing, would drive the requirements in these areas. So we've got a couple of demonstrations to sort of give you guys, or the audience of the webinar, a view as to what WebRA looks like. And the first thing I'm going to show you is a video of the vetting form builder. So I'll kick this off here. So you'll see that we start out with a very basic form. We've got a label here, and we're collecting first name, last name, telephone number, and email address. But in this video, we're going to enhance that. We want to begin collecting information to underpin, in my case, an example of a qualified certificate for digital signatures. So the first thing I'll add is the ability to collect date of birth. As you can see, we drag and drop each of the form fields into the vetting form. So here we're dragging now a text field that you can customize. You can provide default values, descriptions, names. You can mark each of these fields as being required, optional, any sort of characteristics you wish to configure. As part of a higher level of assurance credential, I'm dragging on a file upload field. So I'm going to collect copies or a scanned copy of an identity document. Provide the user with a helpful description of what it is I'm looking for them to provide. We'll let this just fill out. There we go. So copy of passport, national ID card, and/or driver's license, and these can vary depending upon the region you're in and what you want to collect. We're able to tell WebRA when the form's presented what it is in terms of file extensions we're going to allow the user to upload. So PDF, JPEG, or PNG. We can allow multiple uploads in a single file upload field, or in this case, as you see the vetting form builder being built out, I'm actually separating this into different categories. So identity document, then a scanned copy of a utility bill. But again, this would be driven largely by your use case, any legislation that's in play. Again, adding in the allowed file extensions. As you can see, I can set a maximum file size, enable multiple uploads, and mandate whether or not this is a required document or if it's indeed optional. And then the final file upload I'm going to allow, and this is a personal statement. So this is just a letter from my user that kind of supports their requirement to enroll for the credential in play here. But again, this would be driven by your use case. So we'll let the video conclude here with the finalization of this vetting form, allowing for typos, etc. So there's our friendly description being provided. We're going to allow multiple uploads and again specify the file extensions that are acceptable. And there we go. So that now concludes our vetting form. We've got everything we need. We save that, close it, and now of course we need to map that to a particular type of certificate. So here I've got my qualified legal person. I edit the configuration here and pass through all of the varying fields I'm required to use to enroll. And here I've got manual vetting set, and I'm choosing the vetting form that I've created. So that's now applied to my given user. Or sorry, my given certificate type. The next step in the process that we're going to show is how the vetting form is then applied during the enrollment of a user certificate. So I'll kick off this video, and here you'll see, I'm now a user in WebRA's user portal, and I'm going to start the process of requesting a new certificate. So here I choose what it's going to be used for and the type of certificate that I wish to enroll for. The first thing I'm prompted for is the information that's going to be supplied to the backend CA in the certificate request. So I'm being forced here by policy to provide common name, locality, and state, and some fields are automatically supplied for me. I need to provide an email address that goes into the subject alternative name of my certificate. That's collected here. I could manipulate the certificate validity, and here you see the user view of the vetting form that I created. So nice and friendly, collect the information that's required. The mandatory fields are called out by the asterisks. So first name, last name, telephone number, email address, date of birth of the certificate applicant, and then as you can see, as this begins to conclude, the nationality of the individual, and the upload of the identity documents. So here I've got some samples that I created. So as you see, the filtering is being applied based upon the file extension. So we'll let the user conclude their enrollment. They've supplied all the important information and they submit. So there's a subscriber agreement that can be configured that they need to agree to. And we see from the certificate request portal that that's now pending. So as this is a advanced or qualified certificate request that's being supplied, an administrator has now received an email indicating that they need to perform some form of vetting, which leads to our next video showing final certificate approval. So if we begin this video, once again, back in the administrator portal, we view the certificate requests area. We see all of the approved, but most importantly, a pending request for me, Mike Hathaway. And we dive in and take a look at the read-only view of everything that was supplied by the user. So the information going into the certificate and the certificate request, the email address, the validity period, and we can now view and see the information supplied in the vetting form. And manually, we can now go away and check any paperwork that's been supplied to us. We can check external systems. We can download, in this case, and view the identity card or scanned copy of all of the evidence that's been supplied in the certificate request. And this will enable us, to perform, additional verifications on the user's identity in external systems, verify if we need to, with paperwork or, the utility bills that have been supplied, and collect these for audit at future dates. Once I'm happy, I check the box to say I approve the certificate request, and perhaps for an onward or second level RA, I provide some form of message to say, yep, I've verified the information, this is good, or I've verified the information, but can you please go away and check this additional level of detail? So that kind of concludes the video demo walkthroughs. You get to see the interaction of, I want to create a vetting form to fulfill a particular use case, how that's then implemented, and easy to use from a user view. I think that's the all important thing here as we think about electronic know your customer checks, is the reduced amount of friction, and then the administrator process for approving the request itself. So I think sort of in looking at WebRA, and the summary is the fact that we've purpose built this tool to help simplify registration and vetting. As an organizational owner, I need to be able to create those forms. I need my users to be able to easily consume and use them. And I need my RAs to be able to easily identify users by the information they provided, and then submit that or approve that for onward certificate issuance. And that's true for people, devices, and things. We've seen from these video examples how easy this is for onboarding a user, but WebRA has been built and deployed to onboard certificate requests for internal TLS, EV, OV, DV certificate issuance. It has an exciting roadmap and can deal with the enrollment of devices, so the likes of SCEP, CMPv2, enrollment over secure transport, ACME. They're all exciting things that WebRA are doing and is going to be able to do. And it's become, or is, central to the lifecycle management of digital identities, and not just from Ascertia's ADSS server, but also third-party CAs as well. Because of the way we've designed and built this, it's going to be core to digitization initiatives. People do have requirements to gather information about users, people, devices, things before the provisioning of a digital identity, and that could be automatic, as I've said throughout today's presentation, or manual, depending upon the needs. And because of the way it's been built, it's central to orchestrating enrollment against Ascertia products and or business applications. So CAs for the issuance of a digital identity, but Signing Hub and other signing business applications that need to be part of the all-important ecosystem. So I thank you for your time today. We've kind of used a very jam-packed session. It's been exciting to talk to you. So with that, I'll sort of pause there with PowerPoint and open things up to see if we've had any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. That was really interesting. While you were speaking, a few questions have come through. We've got around 10-15 minutes, so I'll try and get through as many as possible. So the first one is, what are your plans in making the KYC process more automatic and less manual, e.g. remote identification of customers, vetting organisations by looking at QIIS, AIPs, taking signed copies back electronically, and so on?
So great question. Yeah, I mean, at the moment, and in the example I showed, yeah, it was a manual process. The administrator does have to go in and eyeball all of the details that have come into them, which is fine if you're into and need to do that from a use case perspective. But absolutely, you want to, where possible, provide automation, especially in large enterprises and national deployments. So WebRA, it has an API that a business application can consume, and the intent is in our roadmap to be able to make calls out to external vetting sources, so that the likes of credit referencing agencies, HR data sources, any external application that has that exposes an API for us to make a vetting call, we want to enable that throughout WebRA. But we can't disclude or discount the fact that some use cases do require manual intervention and manual vetting steps. But absolutely, that's on the agenda for WebRA, and it's part of its roadmap.
And following on for that, we've got one that says, how about a video check required for some qualified certificates required in some countries?
Absolutely, as part of the important signing use case, qualified, and in some cases, depending where you are, AATL, having the ability to make a video call with somebody performing that liveness check, definitely something that we're sort of trying to balance all of the exciting stuff that's going on in the roadmap and finding a way to get that in to service those use cases. So absolutely, that's an important one for us.
Okay. And is there any government project to help backwards countries through donations of hardware, software, free integration, or other ways?
So I think that's probably outside the realms of what Ascertia can do. Definitely for projects that are in some of the developing nations, their financial sponsorship, if you will, comes via World Bank and other such initiatives. And where possible, we're engaged in projects. We're always supportive of digitisation and electronic initiatives. So they're definitely something that we're involved in and interested in, and are probably based on a project by project basis. But from a I guess discounting or a demonstration perspective, we're involved. But that would require a case by case commercial conversation. But definitely, we're encouraging the use of these products to support the growth of these nations and the growth of these projects. Certainly, when you look to some of these developing worlds, a lot of them are sort of going straight to smartphone technology. They're going straight to some of these more sophisticated checks, and the sponsorship and funding does come from places like the World Bank and others in order to ensure that there's a level playing field.
And we've got a couple more for you as well, if that's okay.
Sure.
Is there a difference between digital transformation and digitisation, and do we confuse the two terms?
Yeah, another great question. I mean, there are plenty of folks online who have an opinion on this one. Digitisation is, I guess, the conversion of an analog process to the digital, whereas digitisation is the continued use of digital technologies. So digitisation is about applying technology to existing business processes. Transformation is taking an analog process, such as, I guess, the signing of a contract or a legal agreement, and enabling that. And as we, as businesses evolve, I think we'll reach a point where most of the processes we have, if not all, will have been digitized, and then I guess or been transformed from analog to digital. And then the evolution, going from one version to the next, or from one generation of technology to the next one, will be the evolution or the continued digitization of those processes.
Great. And final question, are there any standards to reference for user enrolment?
Yeah, this is a good one, and it kind of comes back to the question earlier about video vetting and APIs and automation. Largely at the moment, when TSPs are established, it's incumbent upon them to look at the standards, take guidance from their auditor in order to establish what's acceptable in terms of enrolment, vetting needs, and whether or not you have to physically visit someone to perform a face-to-face verification check, or whether performing video or electronic liveness checks is acceptable. And there's lots of heated debates that do continue to rattle on about this. And ETSI has created Specialist Task Force 588, who are charged with creating standards for identity proofing for trust service providers that are, I guess, defined by eIDAS. So it's as you can imagine, a lengthy piece of work that's being undertaken, and all the information that I've seen to date kind of points to the availability of standards probably by the middle of 2021 that will help guide advanced and qualified trust service providers with the amount of guidance they need in order to provide the eKYC check, i.e. the work that WebRA currently does by collecting information in a vetting form, and then the guide rails for what they can perform in terms of face-to-face excuse me, and electronic vetting. I think that's really important to be able to provide that. And once that guidance is in place for those kind of trust service providers, it kind of helps to pave the way for use cases outside of qualified and advanced digital signatures. In the absence of a standard for enrolment in a particular sector or industry, people tend to look to something that pre-exists. So for smart card logon, PIV was a good example that people leveraged. In the case of identity and enrollment vetting, these ETSI standards, I think, will be adopted and leveraged by a lot of enterprises.
Okay, thank you very much. And we don't have any more questions, so that's the end of the questions, unless anyone wants to submit anything else, because we have a couple of minutes. Otherwise, thank you for all your questions, and thank you for joining us today. We hope you found it interesting. A recording of the presentation will be sent to you all shortly. If you have any other questions or just want to speak to a member of the team, just contact marketing@ascertia.com, and we hope to see you on our next webinar. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.